Hi there, Mark here again from talkingbass.net. This is the third and final lesson on the subject of intervals, but there's going to be loads of other lessons in this series on music theory for bass, so please let me know what you think of this series in the comments below, and if you've got any questions or suggestions, just let me know and I'll be happy to answer them or even provide a special video response. As always, check out my other lessons on the Talking Bass video channel. I'm adding more every week, so subscribe to the channel to keep up to date. And please like this video if you find it helpful. It's good to know that my efforts have been useful. So in the first two lessons we learned all the interval names and patterns, and we also looked at the major scale and a few other concepts such as enharmonic equivalency. Now there's only a few other details to cover before we've pretty much learned everything that there is to learn about intervals. So I'll cover those last few details and then I can show you a few ways that we can use them in actually seeing and analysing music. Now, first of all, you need to know that the patterns that we've covered so far are only one way of fingering the intervals. Because of the nature of the bass fretboard, most notes are repeated in several places on the neck, and that means that there's several ways to play any one interval. So if we take that C there on the 8th fret of the E string, to play the perfect fifth interval that we've used in the previous lessons, we'd use that G there at the 10th fret of the A string, which gives us this little diagonal shape. But that same G can be found here at the 5th fret of the D string and there at the open string on the G string. Now, even though that we could use one of several reiterations of the same note up or down the fretboard, we'll just stick to the two closest shapes because they're the most common, immediate and consistent options. But keep in mind that there's always alternatives in different areas of the neck. So for every interval there's a pattern to be found on the neck both above and below the note that we're measuring from. So if we use that C again on the 8th fret of the E string and we ascend through the interval patterns, we find the following. So we've got D flat there, the minor second, D, the major second, and E flat, which is the minor third, E, which is the major third, and then F, the perfect fourth. Now these intervals continue to ascend as you go up, but because the F is just out of reach, we'll leave it there on that string, and then we can use this perfect fourth on the same fret. Now let's look at the same intervals, but measured on the next string up, which in this case is the A string. So here we have the C on the E string. We've got the D flat, the minor second, D, the major second, E flat, the minor third, E, the major third, and then we're back up to the perfect fourth. So C to D flat, to D, to E flat, to E, to F. So from this system of shapes, we find two different patterns for each interval. So we've got the minor second there, and there, major second, major third, major third, and then we're up to the perfect fourth. Now this same reflection can be found with the perfect fifth, minor sixth and major sixth. So we've got the perfect fifth there, we've got the perfect fifth there, minor sixth, major sixth, and then we're up to the minor seventh. The most common instances of these different fingerings are the thirds and the sixths, but the octave and the perfect fifth, they're useful as well. So you want to practice using both shapes for the major third, minor sixth and major sixth, and you'll start to see these instances of them in all the things that you play in, all the bass lines, scales, arpeggios, different melodies, so you'll start to see them all the time. Next, let's take a look at the concept of interval inversion. Now, an inversion occurs when we either take the top note of an interval and move it down an octave, or we take the bottom note of an interval and we move it up an octave. So we basically turn the interval on its head. Now when we do this, we're using the same two notes, but just in a different order. So let's say, for an example, that we take C to E, the major third, but then we take the C and we move it up an octave there. We've now got E to C. So it's the same two notes, but just in a different order. And you'll notice that that major third now becomes a minor sixth. The same thing applies with if we had the C to E and we move the top note, the E, down the octave. We've got C and E, and that pattern is the octave below that original one, which again is a minor sixth pattern. Now there's a quick and simple system to remember when learning how to measure what intervals result from an inversion. That is, major intervals become minor intervals become major intervals, perfect intervals stay the same. And the number is switched to its opposite, so as if we were descending instead of ascending. So a second becomes a seventh, and vice versa. A third becomes a sixth, and vice versa. And a fourth becomes a fifth, and vice versa. So let's try a few examples. So we'll try them all in the key of C. So perfect fourth from C, C to F, drop the F down the octave. We've now got F to C, which is a perfect fifth interval. So a perfect fourth becomes a perfect fifth. Major sixth, C to A, drop the A down the octave. We've now got A to C, which is a minor third. So a major sixth becomes a minor third. C to B, major seventh, drop the B down the octave. We've now got a B to C, which as you can see is a minor second. So a major seventh becomes a minor second. Augmented intervals become diminished and diminished intervals become augmented. So if we take C to G flat, diminished fifth, drop the G flat down an octave, we've now got G flat to C, that's an augmented fourth. Okay? Inversions are a useful way of measuring downwards from a root note. All the intervals so far have been ascending, so when we looked at a perfect fifth, we looked at the C up to the G there. But if we look at the G below the C interval, the interval shape's different. It's that perfect fourth. It's dropped an octave from the usual perfect fifth. Now, let's just take a B below the C. We'd normally look at a B above the C as a major seventh. But the B's below, so it's an inversion of the major seventh, which makes it a minor second. So C down to a B is a minor second interval. C down to a B flat is a major second interval. Okay? This outlines the major differences between intervals and scale degrees. When we look at the C to a G, we can say that the G is a fifth scale degree from C, no matter what the direction or the distance. So C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the G can be here, down here, up here, up here, up here. Doesn't matter, it's always a fifth. But the name changes from perfect fifth to perfect fourth depending on whether it's above or below the root. So above the C, it's a perfect fifth. Take the G down here, and it's a perfect fourth. Scale degrees describe the relationship between two notes, whereas intervals describe the distance. And both methods are used in viewing music, but the one we use is dependent on how or what we're describing. Now, while we're on the subject of scale degrees, it's worth taking a quick look at how they're sometimes abbreviated. So far, we've used the terms fifth and third and second, but you'll occasionally see the degrees written as 3, flat 3, sharp 4, 7. These are just simple abbreviations that use accidental terms like sharp and flat to indicate alterations to the perfect and major intervals. So a perfect fifth would be simply written as 5. An augmented fifth would be written as sharp 5. A major third would be written as 3. And a minor third would be written as flat 3. Now, this way of writing scale degrees and intervals is often used in describing intervallic construction of scales and arpeggios. So a major scale could be more easily written as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A Lydian scale contains a sharpened fourth, so that would be 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7. A harmonic minor scale has a minor third and a minor sixth. So it would be written as 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7. And it's a little quicker than writing complete intervals like major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth. Now that's pretty much all the theory that we need in learning about intervals. So now let's take a quick look at how we can use intervals to help us see the music that we play. Now when we learn a bass line or a riff or a melody on the bass, it pays to see every note as an interval pattern or as a succession of interval patterns. So for instance, here's a basic melody. Now we're in the key of C, so this melody can be analysed as major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major seventh. And then this pattern can be easily transposed to any key. So here it is in the key of A. Or here it is in the key of E flat. Because we know the intervals, it's really easy to just move the tonic point of reference around the neck, and that's the beauty of the bass fingerboard. This can help in memorising music. As we build up a mental catalogue of different musical patterns, it becomes easier and easier to learn new things by relating them to the building blocks that we've already memorised. Intervals are the smallest building blocks in music, and from these we create scales and arpeggios and other types of musical content. And we can then relate the music that we learn to these larger musical frameworks rather than having to constantly try and memorise music as a string of alien phrases. Also, if you just learn a bass line simply as a set of fret numbers or even as note names, the music that you play is going to be devoid of any reference to any musical relationship. Every interval reference contains more information than the basic name suggests. We learn how intervallic relationships sound, and each one triggers a certain emotional response. Just as I showed you with the happy and sad sounds of the major and minor thirds. So learning these intervals, we get a more closer relationship to the general music that we play. Now, let's say that I want to create a fairly melancholy sounding phrase. I know that certain intervals are going to contribute to creating that mood. So I'm using a minor sixth and a minor third. And of course you could say that I'm also using a certain minor scale or a minor arpeggio, but remember that scales and arpeggios are simply combinations of interval building blocks. The emotional value of each larger musical unit is pretty much the sum total of the individual intervals that are within it. Music's a little like chemistry in that sense. Now let's try something a little happier using major and perfect intervals. Now, if I go to an extreme of using a wide variety of intervals with no tonal centre at all, we'll get a really dark sound, and this is the basis of serial and 12-tone music. Okay. So I'll leave it there for this journey into the theory behind intervals. They're going to be a major part of all the other lessons on music theory coming up, so it's worth spending some time familiarising yourself with them. I really can't stress how important intervals are in playing, listening, seeing and studying music. And as I've said before, they really are the building blocks of music, and I see them as similar to learning your ABC. Anyway, remember to like this video and leave a comment. Also visit www.talkingbass.net and sign up to get updates on all my video lessons and blog articles. There's also a great scale manual that you can download for free as a Talking Bass subscriber, so check that out for some good practice material. Okay, see you later.